Yeah.
You're not that famous, my dear.
Yeah, we lifted
stolen.
All right, Alex, I can't start there. No?
Of course.
Okay, that's close enough for me. Good morning, people. And are we able to hear me? Can we hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and I can hear you guys too. Let me say good morning and put you guys all on the screen. There's everybody. Everyone wave, say hi. I was talking to someone last night at a very, very small New Year's Eve party. It was just us and our dear friends. And I hadn't spoken with Gillian a long while about services. And she said, you have everybody on screen with their microphones unmuted? How does that even work?
Just to say hello.
And I said, well, I think we've just all trained into it. We all kind of know how it works. And so I wanted to pass that along. If you're new here, we usually keep our microphones open. This is interactive as much as the people who are on screen interact. And I want to thank everyone who's here for being here, for showing up. If you want your own invitation, you can go to rotb.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get an invitation to watch just like these people. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube or I forgot what else you can watch it on after the fact. Or you're watching it live on Facebook. I don't really even know why I'm acknowledging that you do that, because you already know that you're doing that. Sorry, silly mood this morning. Okay. Let me take a breath of air and look and say hi to Nikki and to Jim and to Jeff and Jess and Alice and everyone else who's joined who I haven't said by name. I'm glad that you guys are here. I came up with a name for what it is that I think we're doing. Here's a new... What do we think of this? Rabbi B's Classroom. No, I got some thumbs up, some shakes of head. All right, well, that's what happens in a democracy. I'm excited. To be here. Let me take a breath of air. Just be thankful. I have an outline of what I think it is we're going to talk about, but I never know exactly what it is we're going to talk about because I insist on keeping this live and keeping it not just sage on the stage, not just me talking, but also interacting and hearing from people. So thank you guys for all being here. So I'm going to go in a little bit of a rush today. I feel like there's so much I want to teach. I looked at everything that we learned last year, everything that we talked about in the series of 12 meetings last year that I made notes on, all the different tools. And I got into a little bit of a panic of like, oh my God, there's so much stuff I want to talk about. It's 2022. Let's get going. Come on. We only have so much time. And I was like, all right, slow down. We'll be all right. So, blah, 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 blah. Let me just follow along here. Black Lives Matter sign is behind me. I have not pointed that out in a long while. You've probably seen it there. I have been thinking about it, and I'm thinking that I'm not doing as much of an active job in supporting Black lives, that it's become tacit. It's become just kind of something that I don't even think about actively. And I need to be stepping up my game. I say that to commit to it myself and to empower you and to challenge you to do the same. Okay. Can I get a nod or something from the people who are on screen? Okay.
Yes, get you a pin like this.
Oh, and look, and there we got. Thank you, Emily, for demonstrating. Get a pin. Do something. Whatever it is you're doing, step it up. 10% more. Or not. I mean, it's a new year. It's a new year. Do it. You do you. That's a theme here at Religion Outside the Box. You do you. That's a religion done right.
So that means 10% more bagels this morning.
Whatever it is. Go 10% up. How are we feeling this morning? I'm looking at all your faces, and I'm trying to create a story based on what I see on your faces. So anyone feel brave enough to say something so I have a little more than just faces to go on?
Dude, you can't see my face.
Okay, that's true. Lee Lee,
can
we
see
are
part of it.
glad to see that you are on screen, and I'm assuming you're in the hospital there with Mom.
Yep.
That's what it looks like. So I'm glad to see that you're here.
Could I have a translation on the blah, 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 blah?
And Bob, glad to know that you're here. And Rita sitting next to you.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Anyone else feel like saying hello? Saying hi?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, this is going to be a good day. My nose is much better. See, I got a real.
Good.
Yes.
You're glad to see
Yes.
all of you, Emily. It's wonderful. So let me give you
volunteer for the check-in.
say that again, Alex.
I said we'll volunteer for the check-in.
Oh, would you do me a favor for your check-in, both you and Scott? Would you take your right hand and put it behind your back? And take your left hands and show them straight up to the camera, would you? And you guys have been married for over a year at this point, so congratulations. That's big news. You're already onto your second year of marriage, so congratulations. Okay, I'm going to jump us into. We're going to get to prayers in a moment. I do want to give you a little bit of a book update. I'm working. Come on, Brian, hit the right keys, would you? There we go. I'm working on a thing with a literary agent. It's going really, really well. Hopefully, my goal is this year sending out 12 of the newsletters, sending out 12 sample of chapters of what it is I'm writing. Just so you guys know, I'm really excited. It's really coming along. Big stuff. Here's what I want to talk about first. First off, I heard a TED Talk, and the TED Talk was about trust. And it was saying, what does it take to build up trust? What does it take? It says, what does it take to make something trustworthy? And I thought about this, and I thought, well, as we're always looking at spiritual, religious things, let me pay attention. And I'm going to give you, here are the 3 components of trust. 3 components of trust is, 1, you have to know that the person on the other end is authentic, that they're real, that they're not lying to you, to themselves, that they are really who they are. And the more authentic somebody is, the more we trust them. And the flip side, if you're looking for some advice of what to do, is be more authentic and people will trust you more. Have more actual reactions to the world as you really are, not pretending to be something else. You build up trust, which is great. So authenticity. Number 2, you have to have trust, demonstrate empathy. You have to demonstrate empathy. To build up trust, you need somebody. If I don't think that you have it in your nature to put someone else before you, I'm not going to trust you. Right? Trust is about empathy. It's about being authentic. And the last part is, it has 2 bits to it. Is the last part to trust is that you have to be seemingly rational. It's not to say that you need to be rational to engender trust. You have to seemingly be rational. And that goes on the other side of it too. Like, you can be completely rational but have a really hard time explaining that to people, and you're not going to build up trust. So it needs to be both parts of that. You have to be seemingly rational, authentic, and have empathy to build up trust.
Isn't there a 4th one?
Go for it. And the 4th one, Jeff?
Vulnerable.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm going to go with
In order to trust someone, you have to put your armor down.
I'm going to put that on. I'm going to put that as a part of authentic. You have to be really, really you. And we're going to talk more about how to do that later. Thank you, Jeff. I can't see you on the screen. I'm trying to make eye contact, but thank you. Thank you for.
I'm here.
There you are. There you are. I see you. You're at the bottom of my screen. Good to see you. Yeah. So it's just a little thing to nugget on of building up trust. Let's go over to our prayers, because I know that we have some people we want to say some prayers for today. Joe, would you go ahead and lead us in that?
Sure. We have Margaret, who's Alex's mom. We have Carol, who's Lee's mom. Betsy Morrow, Maria and Francis, Francis is Maria's mom. Wayne is Emily's husband. Abbas needs permanent residence permit in Sweden. And the last edition that was just recent, Rita, who's Bob's Rita.
Well, thank you for adding in all those names. Let's all take a minute of time, and we'll start when my clock down there goes to 8:11. Let's just take a minute to be silent, to stare at the people on the screen, or peer into your heart. Okay, well, thank you guys all for sharing. I'm taking a moment of time. I'm going a little bit fast. I know that I have two topics I want us to look at today. One is going to be here, the 5 basic emotions, natural and distortions. And the second thing I want us to look at is a topic I have just invented called Godology, what adults should know about God. So I'm going to split our time today between looking at some Godology and some 5 basic emotion, natural and distortions. I've written about this one a number of times. And Alex, if you could put up in the chat, there's a link to a Google Doc. And I'm going to teach the 5 basic emotions. And it's written out there in the Google Doc the last way that I put it in the newsletter. And what I would love is for some of you to on that Google Doc, fix it. Like help make it a stronger document, edit it. It's available to edit, and I'm
trying to find your link. I'm sorry.
It's in the blue section in the teal line 22 says emotions. If you can't get
it.
Okay.
I got it.
Let me take a moment
to know what I was looking for.
Thank Alex always for doing tech, Joe for helping with the prayers, and a special shout out to Steve, who led services last week. And it was, well, besides it being interesting things that came from the conversation, I love the fact that there was no conversation about the fact that there was a substitute teacher. It was just seamless, and how lovely it was that Steve could run it without having to even mention. So thank you, Steve, for doing that. Okay.
You're welcome.
The 5 basic emotions, natural and distortions. So I learned this from a man named Jacob Watson. Most everything that I say are things that I heard him say. He studied and did work with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So somehow that's the pedigree of what I'm teaching. And there different people use different words for some of these emotions. Different people, some people have 6 basic emotions. For this just the way I what I'm teaching right now. What I want to share is these are the things that when I was teaching high school, I found that like my students just didn't know this stuff. I don't know where I know where I learned this, but I just learned some things and I wanted to share them with them. And I think, well, some of you weren't in my high school classroom, so maybe you missed these too. So if you never got a lesson on the 5 basic emotions, here they are. We're going to start off with grief. The purpose of grief is to deal with loss. And the basic way that we do that as human beings is we cry and we tell our story, right? And that's a part of grief, is you have to tell a story. You have to give a eulogy. You don't have to, but you have to tell somebody about the time that your dog did whatever thing that it was that your dog did that you missed. And grief, the way that we deal with grief is, the purpose of grief is to deal with loss. And one of the ways that we deal with loss is we tell stories, which is when somebody's telling you a story, if they're mourning, you got an easy job. Listen, ask a few questions, but don't tell people who are grieving what to do. Just listen. That's what they need. They need to be heard. Okay, that's dealing with grief. Distortions of grief are guilt and shame and blame. Like, so natural form of grief is the way that a 2-year-old might do something. And a 2-year-old might grieve because they lost something. 4-year-old, pick an age. But as we get older, we distort our grief, and it's no longer just telling our story and moving on. We blame, we shame. We feel guilty about what we did. That's a distortion of natural grief. And the idea with all of these are all emotions, and the more naturally we do them, like anger, the better we are at doing anger the right way, the less crap we hold on to in our body from doing it the wrong way. So anger, the purpose of anger is to deal with disappointment. The anger comes always from, we get what we wanted. We wouldn't get angry if we got what we wanted. Anger comes from when we don't get what we want, or from the flip side of that, when we don't want what we got. So either which way. Anger is to help us deal with disappointment. It's natural for a 2-year-old to have a temper tantrum. Distortion of anger come from holding on to anger. We have resentment, bitterness, rage. Those are all distortions of anger. Anger. Third one, and this one, some people use the opposite word here, where I'm using the word jealousy, which I'm spelling this way with a U in it. Some people use envy here, where I'm using the word jealousy. I use the word jealousy where they might use anger. Doesn't really matter, as long as you understand the idea. There's a basic human thing where we compare ourselves to others. It could even be comparing ourselves to who we think we ought to be. But there's a jealousy, and jealousy is natural. And we see someone has something that we don't have, something that we want, and we want that. And this is where learning comes from. It's natural to be jealous. I saw my buddy Larry when I first met him, and I thought, he's the nicest person I know. I'm jealous. If he can do that, why can't I do that? So jealousy helps us to learn and to grow. The distortion of jealousy is hatred, right? You have this thing, instead of me figuring out how I can get it, I'm going to just hate you for having it. All right, 1, 2, 3. Fear. Fear is natural. That protects us. The reason you're scared when you're walking and you almost slip on ice is because you should be scared because you're walking and there's ice. Like, fear is totally natural. It's not natural to distort it into a phobia. Well, that makes it sound like you have a choice to distort it into phobia. You don't. But never leaving the house, that's taking it too far. Like, to be scared at the right times, that's fear. And then the last of the emotions, and this is really, I'm going full frontal today. This is not my usual teaching modality, but it's what we're getting. The last one is love. The last emotion is love, and love is about being seen for who we truly are, allowing ourselves to be seen and seeing others for who they truly are. Love is to express who we truly are. The distortion of love, and this one's a rough word, and I'm sorry for it, but it's the right word. The distortion of love is, instead of being loved exactly for who we are, we tuck away a piece of ourselves and we present to the world who we think the world wants us to see, or who the world is teaching us that the world wants us to present. And that's called prostitution. And it's when you sell off a part of yourself for love, right? That's not real love. And we all do that from time to time in different ways. But real love is accepting ourselves for who we are, accepting other people exactly as they are, not asking them to hide who they are. Okay, that's the distortion of love. Let me take a breath of air. Let me take a look at the screen in front of me and see people's faces and see, because I just talked a lot. Give me a, Jim, you're saying something, but you're muted, so I don't know what you said. But how are we doing? That was a lot that I just did, and that was kind of frontal. How are we holding
hope
up?
fit in as an emotion?
Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
Would hope fit in as an emotion?
I don't know. Hope fit in as an emotion. I maybe. I hope so. We have talked about hope in the past. We said that hope is something that we choose. I'm not sure how that fits in right here, but I'm going to give it some thought. Yeah. I got
How about like joy or gladness? Where does joy or gladness fit into all this?
I don't know. I would put them
Okay.
under love somewhere. Is expressing ourselves for who we really are. I'm thinking of 4-year-olds running down the street just being themselves. That they're filled with joy and gladness, and their own reality. Yeah. I find that a lot of adults, a lot of us as children didn't get taught the emotions as we were growing up. And it's really easier when you have, and I'll just zoom in on the anger one. Like, we all talked about anger a lot, about Aristotle's idea of when to get angry, how to get angry, to whom, and what amount. It's easier when you know how to do it, you know what the emotion's really supposed to be for. I think we can hit the note a little sweeter, right? It's a little more tuned. Boy, that sounds a little woo-woo-y, but I understood what I was saying. I'm sticking with it. Okay. Questions about these 5 things?
Yeah.
Yeah, shoot.
What was the distortion of grief?
Blame. Often
Blame.
a distortion of grief is blame. The people at the hospital, if they had only... The people at the hospital were trying to save your loved one. Let's not blame them.
Okay, thank you.
Or any other. If I or shame. You know, if I had only done this, then that person would still be alive. That's a common. Yeah. Okay. If you have more thoughts to add, go onto that Google Doc. And really, I teach it as best as I can, but I'd love more input and more help from more of you. Even if you don't think that, like, if you can put it in words that make sense to you, which are different than the words that I put them in, the stronger what it is that's that document, and the better you know it. So anyway, you don't need to have homework. You're all fine. You're adults. It's 2022. Do your own. Do you. All right. Let me move us along for a second. Because I have this other big topic I want to talk about. But before we do that, we're going to do a little brain clearing exercise. Hold on. Okay, brain clearing exercise. Please hold. Let me get this to be this screen. Can I see everybody now? Oh no. I might have to just do this blind. No? Okay. Here we go. All right, everybody, we're going to clear our brains for a second. And I'm going to ask you, Alex, there we go. That's exactly the view I wanted us to have. Okay, everybody, do this for a second. Can I see both of your hands on the screen? Please, and this is actually, they've showed this, we're going to get our left and right hemispheres of our brains talking again. It gives you a little bit of an energy reset. Right hand going on your left ear. Right hand's going in your left ear. This is not the hard part. If this is the hard part, you're doing great. Left hand is touching your nose. Okay, I'm going to do it first. You're going to clap and switch. So you're going to have your right hand on your nose, left hand on your ear. You're going to clap and switch. Go right ahead. Go ahead and do it.
Not going so good.
Some of you
Well,
don't have a nose. I see a bunch of people just
nothing.
Okay. So I know this. I know that just seems like a silly thing, but there's so much that we can unpack and so much learning that happens right in there. I want you to take a moment and think about, how did you react when you couldn't do this thing? Were you mad at yourself? Or did you laugh?
I laughed.
You laughed. And I
laughed
would...
at everyone else.
Or you laugh at everyone else. I wonder if in the regular world, when you see someone doing something and failing at it, do you get frustrated at them? What the hell's wrong with them? Or can you have a sense of humor? And the same when you make a mistake, when you get overwhelmed, you can't do something right. Do you get mad at yourself? Or do you have the ability, and this is where I think this is what spiritual religious life is all about. Do you have the ability to say, I don't need to beat myself up? Or I'm going to learn how to not beat myself up. It's going to take practice. And wait a moment. Oh no, look at that. The analogy is going to hold. How are you going to get better at doing this? How are you going to get better at it?
Practice.
You know the answer to that. How are you going to get better at being kind and loving to everybody?
Practice.
By putting your right hand on your left ear and your left hand on your nose and doing it. Anyone a graduate?
Someone else.
Graduate of 2021's class, and we did pinky thumb.
Yeah.
Now, if you want a bonus one, here's what you do. You'd put your two thumbs touching each other. You put your one pinky up in the air and your one thumb out. And if you do it right, you should be able to just switch back and forth. Oh, is it both hands facing that way? Which way was it? Oh, you have your fist facing. You go pinky thumb, pinky thumb. There it was. I didn't get the setup right. Anyhow, the point is you have until the end of 2022 to be less irritated. So you have a whole year. Congratulations. I made up the arbitrary time boundary because what the heck. All right, here we go. We're going to do our second piece here. Godology. Here's my sign for it. Godology.
I like that word. I love that word.
Emily, I adore you, and I am always so thankful for your positivity and willingness.
Spontaneity.
And spontaneity. All right, Godology. There are three things that I would think that all adults would enjoy knowing about God. The three parts are going to be part one, a very brief history of God. 2, something called the 5 gods. And 3, spiritual religious stages. I'm going to go through all of these. Give us not enough time to do any of justice to any of it, but I think the basics here are going to give us some goodness. So, history of God. Here's a history of God in 5 stages. This isn't to say this is who God is. This is to say this is in a biblical account how people have seen God in the Bible, and how the character of God, much like if you look at any book, characters change from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. That we're used to. And there's this way of looking at the Bible of saying, well, let's look at how the character of God changes, and we see how people understood God in terms of where society was. Right? As society changed, so did our images of God change. So, the beginning books of the Bible, this is this classic God who is a jealous, totalitarian ruler. God is a jealous, totalitarian ruler. You can think of God sitting in the big throne, usually male, with a thunderbolt by God's side, ready to smote you for any injustices you've done. Jealous, totalitarian ruler. No mercy. That's God. By Genesis 18, the character of God has put down the flaming lightning bolt, and it's now replaced with a constitution. And God has become a constitutional monarch by the story of Abraham, where God says to Abraham, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. If you do that for me, I'll do this. It's a constitution. There's a give or take. There's a relationship between the two of them. It's not just the jealous totalitarian ruler. God is a constitutional monarch, agreeing to terms. Book of Exodus, everything changes. And God becomes a nameless deity of history. Moses asks God in the storyline, who should I tell Pharaoh sent me? And God gives it, and it's a beautiful enigmatic phrase, I am what I am, or I will be what I will be. And the reason we don't know how to translate it is because the words that are used there in the Hebrew, it's the only time they're ever used that way in the Hebrew. So if you've never seen a word before, you don't exactly know how to translate it, because usually you need context. And if the word only happens the once, you don't. So God becomes this nameless deity of history, no name. But I am the God who was the God of your forefathers. I am the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. God is nameless, but in with history. And here I like to think of the image where God has lost all corporality, that God's no longer visible. God is the invisible, nameless deity of history. So we're just left with the history book, and that's who God is. We move from nameless deity of history. There's a split here. This is in about the year, about 2022 years ago, actually. There's this split in understanding God. And there's one which is Jesus Christ, superstar Jesus Christ, the lover of all people and all things. This is Jesus with the big heart. And then there's the rabbis who portray God. I call it RRR. God is the reclusive requirer of rules. The rabbis don't actually see God very much, but they know that God wants a lot of rules followed for them. This is an arbitrary split between the two. And then God becomes, in our modern era, the placeholder for our highest ideals.
Yeah.
We say, God forbid. That's a placeholder for our highest ideals. From your ears to God's mouth, from your mouth to God's ears, it's a placeholder for our highest ideals. It's not God as a thing, but this means very, 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 very much to the highest of our ethics. Okay, how are we doing?
Wow, we're getting a lot of stuff here.
Thank you, Emily, for your participation and active response. Hint, hint. The rest of you, right? You know this is Zoom. I can see you and I can hear you, so I appreciate.
I think you're being very unfair to your presentation of the rabbinic at the time of Jesus, because they understood the rules to be gifts, not just that you make it sound like Jesus is all love and the rabbis are all picky union.
Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's terrible what I did, Carol. I agree with you. I don't like it. I don't like it very much.
Oh, when you put it up there, you could have changed it.
Yes.
I could have, but I did want, and I will change it.
By your professor.
It's fine. By the next time, I will have something different. I wanted to have something here that the rabbis of the Talmud took God in a certain way, and that there was I'll figure out better. Hey, That's helpful. Right? It's really helpful to be corrected if you hear it right.
Mm-hmm. Way to go, Carol.
Right?
Yeah.
And to add to it, I had just thanked Emily for participating by saying something. And Carol pushed it even further, and she said something, and it wasn't necessarily complimentary. But if I go back and we say this is a safe space, why is it a safe space? In a safe space, you can say something that's not necessarily complimentary to the person in charge. And it still works out. Oh, yay, look at that. Okay, good. That was a lot. That was a lot, the history of God. We have 2 more sections to go. Everybody ready? Buckled up?
Wow.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to do that after. All right. Baylor University 2006 does a study about, they always do these great religious studies. And they do a study and they find that in North America, when people say they believe in God, they are talking about 4 different gods. And the first God that they're talking about when they say I believe in God is they believe in authoritarian God. That goes back to that idea of Zeus sitting in a seat. The notion of God that approximately a quarter of North American people have is this notion of Zeus. You ate a bacon double cheeseburger on Passover. I'm going to cause you
indigestion.
Indigestion. So about a third of the people go towards an authoritarian God. That's their natural image when they're talking about believing in God, or they don't believe in God. That's the one they're talking about. Second one is benevolent. Benevolent. Benevolent is a Santa Claus notion of God. That God just loves everyone, wants to love everyone, wears a red suit, sees you if you're sleeping, that kind of thing. But you had a bacon double cheeseburger, and God says, "Oh, I understand. Those are tasty." Right? God's authoritarian. God's benevolent. The third idea of God is of a vice principal of a high school. The vice principal whose job it is to watch you and catch you and see in this notion of God says, "Oh, you had a bacon double cheeseburger? I'm going to add that to the list of things we're going to talk about when you come to the hereafter. We're going to have a conversation about all those things." It's a critical notion of God, that God's watching and judging and you're going to get your comeuppance later, so you better not have that bacon double cheeseburger. D, that is the distant notion of God, that God was a great clockmaker who set everything in motion and then kind of checked out. These 4 notions of God, this tends to be the Midwest. This is the West. This is the Southeast. This was the Northeast. It goes, and then they do the study and they break it down according to people's educational levels, which gods they believe in. Their income changes which gods they believe in. It's really fascinating. What they left out was this one, because I said there were 5, and they only included the top 4. So authoritarian, benevolent, critical, and distant, and the last one is anything else. Because none of those are correct. So that brings us to our 5th notion of God. All right, how are we doing now, dear people?
I think E should be energy.
Energy would be part of anything else. That's beautiful. Thanks, Rob. Okay. Just let's see a little bit for learning's sake. If we go back over the 5 different notions of God, do you think you can remember what they are? What was the top one? Authoritarian. Yeah, this is Zeus.
authoritative, benevolent,
benevolent, and that one is
Critical.
Santa. Critical,
Critical.
critical,
that's a vice principal.
Distant.
Distant.
Distant, and that's the clockmaker.
Distant.
Everything else.
Loving God.
And everything else. Good.
Like the
You
energy.
take the else off of it, then everything could be number 5.
Oh, you guys are all like poetic. That's fantastic. Good. We just have it be everything. Okay. I'm going to take a moment before we do get to the 5, the third part of Godology. I had promised myself that I was going to give you guys a tour. So please hold on. Let me get this screen ready. Dang it. Okay, now I'm going to do share screen. Did that work? Are you sharing my screen? You are not sharing my screen.
No.
Okay, here we go. Hold on. There, now you're seeing my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to... I'm going to log out. I wanted to show you guys... And Alex, if you would put in the chat the link to the Clubhouse.
I will do that.
Thank you. If it's MN, it stands for Mighty Network, mn.rotb.org, and you can make your own login, but you can see we have a chat which has discussed a lot of different kinds of candy recently. We have special little rooms. My computer is going too slow for you to see this. Oh, golly gee. Well, it's really awesome and fun, and just take my word for it. So this was the page I wanted to start with. So here is what it looks like to log in. And you can choose a membership plan, and it is for the correct price of absolutely free. So if you click here, you can get your own account and we're starting a new section that's going to be coming out next week or so, and you'll see. Anyway, that tour was really unimpressive. So, thank you guys.
That's okay.
I'm going to move us along. Let's go to the third part of this Godology talk. Shall we? Yes, we shall. There we go. Third part of our Godology talk. As we get older, things in us change, right? There's a certain switch in our brains that doesn't switch to be able to like learning how to read. At a certain point after you're 5, something in your brain changes and reading becomes doable. We grow and we change as our bodies and our brains change and mature, and we're used to that with so many things. Well, this one is about the stages of belief, and this is what I'm going to present is influenced by a guy named Fowler, Fowler, and I'm using different words than he uses, but I'm using a lot of the concepts that he came up with, which was that when we're little, we believe in a world filled with fairies and monsters, and like the monster under the bed that your child has in the middle of the night, they're not making that up. There's a monster under their bed. Like, this shit's real. If you pray hard enough, you believe enough, Tinkerbell, all that goodness, you believe in a real world filled with magic. And it's not that we ever leave to get to the next stage. It's just the next stage opens up and we can put more of a percentage of ourselves in different stages. We're going to continue to stay in magic. When my dad was dying, dudes, I was so flat back in magic in ways that it was impressive. Magic leads to some often dependence, where this is what the religion tells me. This is as it's written, and this is how the story is, and that's how it is. And I need to believe as I'm told. It's just the next step. It's logical. Now we're going to zoom ahead. Often college, this one really concretizes for people. Independence. This is 180 degrees from dependence. You say, screw this, science all the way. Even if there was an exodus from Egypt, it's all explained from the blood in the Nile was really a clay explosion, and there was so much that looked red, and then the frogs were because they couldn't breathe in the red water, and then the boils come from the flies that were on all the dead frogs, and like that's independence, and the Bible's hooey and poo-poo, and independence is I don't need the dependence anymore. We switch. This is my favorite one. Paradoxicality. Paradoxicality is a faith stage where you can accept and believe something is both is and is not at the same time. Dependence is me saying at Passover, my father was a slave in the land of Egypt. Independence is me saying, no, he wasn't. He was born in New York. Paradoxicality is my ability to hold both true at the same time. At Passover, I can say I was a slave in the land of Egypt, knowing full well that I was not a slave in the land of Egypt. Paradoxicality is where you realize the opposite of a truth can also be true. Paradoxicality, I find for a lot of people who I'm working with in spiritual direction, they just never heard of it. And once you hear the idea of being able to hold both at the same time, it lightens people up, and they go, oh, well, it doesn't all have to be true. It doesn't all have to be false. It can be both. Of course. Yeah, of course. Last stage, and this one's called unity. Unity is something that we all get glimpses of from time to time, where we get a sense that the world is as it is. We feel connected to everything and to ourselves and to our purpose, and things feel unity. So that comes from paradoxicality, is the sense of unity, of feeling at oneness. And here's the big contribution that I've made to this. I add that arrow back in. That unity starts to feel like magic. Okay. Magic, dependence, independence, paradox. Sometimes as an exercise, and you don't, if you want to learn a bit about yourself, give yourself 100 points, and the rule that you can't divide it 20 points in each of the 5 categories. How many points would you say you are in each one today? And then try it in a week and see where the things have moved. Yeah, Schmulz.
Now, can I hear me?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Okay. One interesting thing is that at first, unity had to do with dependence. While in the second, once you find unity, you don't need to be dependent anymore.
Correct. Oh, I guess there should be a lot of extra arrows in here too. Good. Look, we talked about a lot of things today so far, and I'm not even done. I have one other thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
You're trying to do the whole year in one day.
We're going to talk more about this stuff at another time.
No, this is it, Emily. That's it. There's an exam after this. Yeah, so
this is the overture for the year.
So yeah, I'm glad to talk about. I want to talk about all that stuff, but tell me what it is you mean when you ask if we're going to talk about this more.
Well, it's like we're getting too much in our brain at one time. So I'm not getting other people's input as much.
Yeah, so this was a choice I made today to go, instead of doing small groups where we're sharing with each other, I went really full a lot that I wanted to teach, but the other piece, and it happened very organically with Carol, was I want, and it was why I brought up the thing about trust, about trustworthiness and being authentic, is I have this feeling as the guy leading these services that there's not always full open. I'm trying my best to stay as open, authentic, and honest as I can. But I know that sometimes there's something that happens in the service people didn't understand or they didn't like, and they don't always say so. And so I was really pleased that Carol said, no, Rabbi, that's off. I don't like what you're doing to Jesus there. That's not cool. I'm glad for that. And that's what I want to explore more in this 2022 is why am I as the guy, I know in donuts and afterwards, right? We have next hour and people do donuts and deep dive and people say, well, I think what the rabbi was talking about was crap. And I hear that afterwards. And I'm only mad that I don't get to hear that now. I don't, like, you all know me well enough.
And we're both going at the same time.
Say that again, Joy. I didn't catch you.
It's okay.
Okay.
I have a problem. It's got a cat next to me.
It's a feline
trying to
issue.
get it to go away.
I say.
I think Rags was trying to say something.
Yeah, Rags. Thank you.
I was saying to get feedback, you have to leave space for feedback. And so when you pack something in, a year worth in a day.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's not that people aren't willing to respond. It's they're trying to let you do what you said you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which get everything out there.
So I'm at a cross.
It's too much. It's too much.
It's too much. I'm at a little bit of a stuck point. Maybe I do it differently. Maybe this is what I do. Is maybe I keep the pace of Saturdays at a slower pace, but there's a master's class of stuff I want to go, and maybe I make that a separate class. And people who want to go hardcore, yeah.
There's limitations to this modality.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is not going to work. Go ahead, Michael.
The limitations to this modality of community and teaching and talking, and people are coming with, their own deep feelings and issues.
Yeah. You're totally right.
Yeah, and you touch on words and this and that, and it's fascinating and it's unique, and it's tough because it's a balance between deep inner thought and therapeutic kind of process that many of us are going through, and then grappling with how does this hang with religion, which is blown wide open in our time.
Right.
It's fascinating that this is the soup that we're in. It's a really complicated soup, but very attractive, very desirous. But it's in the process of becoming something that it's not quite aware of what it is.
Right. That's good. Go ahead, Rags.
One thing I've been wondering since you said it at the beginning is whether the image, having in your head the image of Rabbi Brian's classroom.
Yeah, totally.
Not limiting.
Say that again.
I think that may be limiting. I could be totally wrong, but it may limit you in the sense that does put you in the presentation mode.
Yeah, totally.
And inhibits, depending what kind of classes are in people's experience and all, but it may inhibit the kind of exchange you're saying you want. So
I think maybe I put it, maybe this is, okay, so back when I taught high school classes, right? I can tell you part of the magic formula that worked, and I'm trying to figure out how to recreate it here, was there was quadratic equations that we had to deal with. And so we did. And throughout, there was this, they all had to be, they were all there anyhow. And if we could learn these other things about emotions and we can learn other things, we got through the math. I'm not making, this is not sounding exactly right.
Clear.
But
I think that may be part of what I'm talking about the limitation of the model.
Yeah.
Because we're not learning quadratic equations here.
Right.
No, we're not.
Much as I enjoy quadratic equations.
But so why am so the part that I tried to rush through is because I want us to all be, I want us to have some similar vocabulary when we talk about God, to know, okay, there are at least these 4 different kinds, and then there are all these different ways that people understood God to be. I want to loosen that up so that we can have a discussion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jess.
Jess and Anne had their hands up.
Yeah.
I was just going to say quickly that during the service hour, we also know we have, the audience of folks who are learning and are not in the Zoom. And so, for myself, maybe I feel a little bit like responsible for being like right and like having the right answers, or like being, more of an example or a leader. And so it makes me personally a little more self-conscious when we're in the smaller rooms. Then I feel like I'm just with you guys. And so I can make mistakes, and I can, say the incorrect thing, or, accidentally drop an F-bomb in there, if it pops out, and I feel a little bit more like I can be vulnerable and make mistakes and not be right, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit easier to be freer in the smaller group
and
or the after group.
And thank you for saying it. And this conversation we're having right now, this is, ironically maybe, but this is exactly where I wanted to get to, is how do we have this honest, open conversation in the large group too? Why is it just in the small group? If it's this authenticity thing, I'm doing as authentic as I can. And I'm hoping to keep it so that you guys feel safe enough. And that's what we're doing right now. So who used the word blooming? This thing is blooming. It's becoming what it's becoming. I think Michael said something.
So Anne had her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
Go.
Oh, I was just going to say, with your classroom analogy, today's was like an overview of the syllabus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so it puts context for other things. And then, if we could dive deeper into, like, you could pick one, we have the context for describing it in relation to the other things.
Okay. And so to loop back, and here were the 5 basic emotions, and then let's spend a week looking at anger.
We can delve deeper, and that's
interesting.
Having the space, because a lot of it is the needing the time and the space to delve deeper.
And let's do Christine and Nikki, and then Joe.
Yes. I was just thinking that you're talking about really interesting things, but we need to think about it before we can say something intelligent about it.
Okay, so let's come back. Let's come back next week, and we'll talk more. Nikki.
Yeah, I think part of it for me is being on social media. There are certain things I'm just not willing to share with the entire world and to have out there for the rest of eternity.
Fair enough.
It's really good for me to listen to a lot of this stuff, and then to do a deeper dive, whether it's just whatever group I'm in after. Right. Because that's not out there to the general public.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I think about that, and maybe that's my age. I don't know.
No, it's hard.
They don't really think of it.
No, I agree with Nikki on that score. I mean, there's certain things that I'm not always wanting to share completely, because I know it's on the it's going to be recorded and it's going to be on the internet forever.
Yeah. Okay. And Joe, you had something? Oh my God. And I forgot to say, Jordan did not beat me at chess, nor did I lose.
We didn't have announcements.
Yeah, we didn't play, but we agreed to call it a draw.
Let's call it a draw.
Let's call it a draw.
Joe, you had something you were going to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I hear what makes sense about this is the syllabus of what could be coming, and a part I think that would help maybe change a lot of things is that there's practical application. Like, this is all good starting ground, but then let's get into, okay, what does this look like in my everyday experience?
Right, and I love it. And here, yes, sorry, I made a note while you were talking. We're going to split off and to do donuts and to do the deep dive. I do think of something that's going to happen. I can foresee the future just a little bit here, is that we'll try to do whatever it is that this thing is going to become, and you're going to be disappointed because that's how this is built. There's no way that what we do is going to be fitting for everyone. And so how do we deal with disappointment in a real way? So I look forward to being disappointed in you next week.
We can deal with it with paradoxicality.
Yeah. All right. I am going to, you guys know I get a little bit time bound. We are at 9:00 my time, which is time to break off into small groups. Thank you guys all for coming. Boy, oh boy, I feel like the luckiest little rabbi in town. Let's all wave, say goodbye. Stick around, Alex. You are hostified.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye, Rabbi.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Who's planning on? I don't see Kip. Who's planning on hosting the deep dive? Al. Okay, I'm gonna.
I can.